Hello, friends. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the third episode of Caste Conversation. I'm Pradeep Pariyar. Caste Conversation is a conversation to understand the caste dynamics that affect our society, our life, and our value systems. Caste Conversation is an initiative of Dalit Lives Matter Nepal to ignite solution-oriented dialogue for the elimination, caste-based discrimination, and untouchability. Dalit Life Matter Nepal is a social movement to create a just society where every Nepali can enjoy life without the fear of being persecuted in the name of caste. It is an initiative to counter and fight back all form of caste-based discrimination and untouchability, a collective intervention to ensure every right of every single Nepalese citizen guaranteed in the Constitution of Nepal. Dalit Life Matter Nepal is connection with the people to build a collective force and amplify people power to eradicate any inequality, discrimination, and violence based on the caste systems. Today's episode of Caste Conversation brings you Mr. Ashok Bharati, a renowned Indian activist on Dalit and marginalized issues. Mr. Bharati is the chairman of National Confederation of Dalit Organization NAPTOR, India. He served as a Kabir chair on social conflict at the IPCS. In his 30-year career, he has advocated the causes of the Dalit people and Dalit rights and has worked towards creating a more inclusive and equitable society. He has served in various positions, such as a co-chair Indigenous People International Action Team, Brussels, Belgium, convener Global Task Force on Social Exclusion set up by the Global Call to Action Against Poverty, and member working group on Dalits National Advisory Council, Government of India. Among others, he is a recipient of Care Millennium Award 2011 for outstanding work on MDGs and Dalit Ratna Award as well. He has many titles as well. Ashokji, welcome to Caste Conversation. Ashokji, can you unmute? We are not hearing you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pradeep ji. And it's really a pleasure to be here with my younger generations, my younger people, and my young leaders. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for making time. Ashok Bharti is an inspiration for me as well. It's through him that I have learned much about Dalit movement in India. Ambedkar wrote the Indian Constitution. When I learned of problem in India similar to Nepal, I realized that the caste questions and problems are much larger and complex. I still remember your interview taken some 18 years ago. I don't exactly remember what I asked, but I have a fresh memories of you telling me, Pradeep, you should continuously fight against the casteism, continue the movement. I still remember Ashok Bhai. It's a very inspirational. Thank you for that. It must be the same motivation that after 18 years, we are once again talking about the same issues. My first question to Ashok Bharati, 70 years have passed since Ambedkar wrote the Constitution of India. He was the chairman of the drafting committee. What has been achievement of Dalit movement in this 70 years? What should we learn from the India's Dalit movement? Time has passed, but the problem still remains. Why? You have a 20 minutes, Ashok Bharati. Please go ahead.
Well, Pradeep, before we analyze and I really, speak on that, what we have gained in post-independence era, it is important to know that what was the situation at the time of independence. At the time of independence, the Dalits, which now numbers about 250 millions in India, scheduled caste alone, they had no right whatsoever is considered as human rights today. They couldn't go to the school, they couldn't enter the temples, they couldn't be employed, they couldn't choose their vocation, they couldn't become doctors, they couldn't become engineers, they couldn't adopt the modern occupations. There were hardly number of people who were really graduate at that time. Forget about the doctorates or the postgraduates. So at the time of independence, the Dalits were really, really the wretched people of the country. And this is there because of the Hindu Varna and caste system, which existed in India, which continue to exist in India. Because Hindu did not allow them to fetch waters, did not allow them to study in schools, did not allow them to enter into the public places, did not allow them to choose vocations. So these were the situation. Apart from this, the concept of purity and pollution was supreme at that time. If you remember, in 1950s, the President of Indian Republic washed the fields of more than 100 Brahmins in Varanasi. So that was the status, that was the stage that we were in the pre-independent India. Apart from this, the concept of superiority and inferiority of caste and varnas was supreme. There was a belief in the upper caste or so-called Dvijas that they had all merits, and Dalits and Shudras had no merits. So these were the foundations on which the India started in 1947. Now, what has happened since then? So, first of all, in last 70 years, the fundamental of superiority and inferiority have been challenged unquestionably. So now, the concept of inferiority and superiority has been demolished. The concept of merit of Dvijas or the upper caste has been shattered to the ground. Prior to when India got independence, India has a massive bonded labors and slavery. Now it is almost challenged and abolished. So I guess these are the few social norms which have been completely challenged, and I am pretty sure that no Dvija or upper caste now can boast, unless he is an absurd, stupid person. They can't challenge the concept of equality in the country. So this is what has happened in the last 70 years. Apart from this, India has produced millions and millions of educated Dalits, and you can find them in all vocations, whether it is the field of medicines, engineering, journalism, business, politics, culture. You name the field and you will find there are Dalits who have carved out a name for themselves. For example, I'll tell you, Elayya Raja from South India was an untouchable. Indian radio did not play his song at that time, and Radio Ceylon used to, broadcast his songs. He's a Dalit. Now, he was the Dalits, and his music become the marketing point for the South Indian movies. Not only that, the socio-economic conditions of the Dalits have changed in the last 70 years. We have seen that Dalits have reached to the Supreme Court as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Two Dalits have become the President of the country, Indian Republic. Dalit women have become the Speaker. Dalit men have become the Speaker of the Parliament. They have chaired the Rajya Sabha. You know that Vice President, Mr. K.R. Narayan, was first the Prime Minister, was the Vice President. So therefore, there is no field where Dalit have not touched. Dalit men and women have made their presence felt in politics. A state called Uttar Pradesh, which can never think of having a Dalit as a chief minister, had a chief minister 4 times in Uttar Pradesh. So therefore, I guess that in last 70 years, 73 years to be precise, Dalits have made large strides into the development. But, you know, there are still, the progress is, if we look into the speed of the progress, that has not really been that fast as it should have been. If I share with you that more than 900,000 atrocities have taken place in last 25 years on scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. I will share you with the figures that how these things have happened. In last 25 years, 16,792 scheduled castes have been murdered by the casteist element. More than 35,000 women have been raped by casteist element. And more than 258,000 people have been put under the Prevention of Atrocity Act. So the progress of the Dalits should have been welcomed by the upper caste in the country, but somehow Dalit face backlash when they progress. So that remains an issue that need to be touched. So I said that, for example, if we look into the land pattern of the country, in last, since 1980-81, the number of land holding of the Dalits have increased by 1.85 times. But the total land holding of the Dalits have just been only 1.06 times. It means lots of Dalit land has been fragmented to unproductive pieces of the land. So this is also a reality. Today I am sharing, you know that if you look at the NAGDO's Twitter handle, we have been sharing the figure on the participation of the Dalits in government, central government job. In last 73 years, we are yet fighting to get a proportionate share of representation in the central government services. We are still at 13.38% instead of 15% in class 1 jobs. So these are the issues that I guess that we have seen. Because I wouldn't like to burden the the people who are in this, listening to this conversation, caste conversation. But about 50% of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, they are still illiterate. So and therefore Dalit movement has to think. Governments have not made literate to all scheduled castes or the Dalit people. Therefore, will Dalit movement take the responsibility of making every Dalit, men, women, and children literate? So these are the issues that still remain our, cornerstone. And as you know, Dr. Ambedkar said that we need to remind ourselves in this battle of progress, we are alone. With the new economic policy which is controlled by the market, what would be the value of those people who are assetless, propertyless, and without money? Market values those who have money. Unfortunately, Dalit movement in last 73 years, particularly post Ambedkar, have not really seriously considered economic issues as the agenda of the Dalit movement. So there are some issues of concern also, and there are lots of gain also. So yeah, this is.
Thank you so much. This is very enlightening. Thank you so much. But I just want to make follow-up questions of what you recently mentioned. You mentioned that there is already Dalit have served India in leading position, including the president, but the discrimination still prevails. They are still killed. On the other hand, poverty and inequality is continuously rising. What is the main root cause of it? What could be the solutions? What could be the solution? What are you thinking and on this?
Well, you know that the India has a historic problem of poverty. Dr. Ambedkar said the fundamental of poverty in India is the caste system, Varnashram system, because it prevents people to liberate themselves from the orthodoxy of occupations. So therefore, the rural economy do not allow Dalits to choose other vocations. Why there is so much violence against Dalit? Because they want to be different from they have been told to remain. So that is the reason. The second issue is India's economy has largely remained agrarian economy. An agrarian economy with a limited land and land resources cannot be as productive to ensure that everybody's poverty is taken care of. There is too much pressure on the land. So therefore, the industrialization of India has not taken place as it should have been. I know that India is fast working towards industrialization, but still, despite the new economic policy of 1990s, India has not industrialized. Rather, India has become the hub of huge exports. And let me share that in current scenario where India and China both are at loggerheads for the wrong reasons, the India's dependence on Chinese products and services and technology that we import from China is huge. Our export is very less. And this is despite that we have a large reservoir of human resource. But the industry particularly private industry, does not encourage employment of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe in the business and industry. Because Indian industry still remain a caste dominant industry. If the owner is a Brahmin, most of the top notch of the industry would be Brahmins. If it happened to be a Thakur or the Rajput or the Kshatriyas, the top notch of the industry would be of that particular company would be like that. So India is still largely believe in India still largely believe in nepotism, not in merit. And when there is a debate on the reservations, bogey of merit is always raised. Let me share that very recently in Rajasthan, a boy, Sameer Meghwal, got 98% in 12th class science stream. You would be surprised to know newspaper site First Post, which is a website based post, and most of the newspaper did not reported this boy as topper of the Rajasthan Education Board, because it hurts their notion of merit. They can't see a Dalit topping the 12th standard, a Dalit topping the civil service exam, a Dalit topping the medical exams, a Dalit become topper of any other competitive exam. They can't see it, they can't digest it, because Dalit do not fit in their concept of fraudulent merit.
Okay, you just mentioned about the reservation. I just want to make follow-up questions on that. In India, the reservation or quota system has given birth to the middle class Dalits. But it is said that political power has not emerged because it's already 70 years. Why?
Well, you know that recently there was a discussion with me. I had a discussion on Pune Pact. And if you know, the Pune Pact is considered as a cornerstone of the political power of the Dalits in India. When British government was here, in 1932, they declared a communal award. Communal award meant for Dalits and Dalit leader to be elected by the Dalits. Unfortunately, Gandhiji went on a fast unto death, asking the British government to withdraw communal award. Otherwise, he will commit fast unto death. And what Gandhiji was saying? Gandhiji was more worried about the rights of the Hindus. He was not worried about the plight of the Dalits, plight of the untouchable, but he was concerned about power and the unity of the Hindus. Dr. Ambedkar was coached, and he was coached to sign an agreement which is known as Pune Pact. Pune Pact was a death knell in achieving the political power by the Dalits, because Pune Pact provided that the representative of the Dalits will be selected by not only by the Dalits but everyone in the Indian society. Everyone in Indian society means all touchables. Touchable means 85% or around 80% of the Hindus, which includes other backward classes and Savarn classes. So as Dalits are not in majority anywhere in the country. Dr. Ambedkar used to say this. People are talking about the apartheid in South Africa. But in India, we have a South Africa in every village. So, when you have a South Africa in every Indian village, how the Indian whites would allow Indian blacks to liberate themselves and achieve the political power? So Pune Pact actually did the same thing. It snatched away the political empowerment of the Dalits and bestowed upon them a power from the top, where the political parties controlled by the upper classes and upper caste will choose who should be the Dalit leader, who should be Dalit representative, who should contest Lok Sabha, who should contest Vidhan Sabha, who should be in Rajya Sabha. So essentially, the Dalit member of parliaments, member of legislative assembly are not chosen by Dalits, but chosen by everyone. Therefore, and it is quite, if you talk to Dalit member of parliaments or member of legislative assembly, they will tell you, we are not elected only by the Dalits, so why should only worry only Dalits? We have to take care of the non-Dalits also. So this is the political disempowerment of the Dalit. But I am sure Dalit movement has been thinking on these issues. And hopefully, sooner or later, we have to resolve this issue. India has to resolve this issue to empower politically Dalits. And I hope that we see a silver lining where now the touchable other backward classes slowly are gearing up. They are also knowing that how they are being discriminated, how they are being deprived, how are they being deceived by the upper classes. So they are also learning. So sooner or later, there will be a consciousness of togetherness. And this consciousness of togetherness of Indian society will certainly empower Dalits politically.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for a great answer. And then you mentioned about the South Africa example. That's similar for Nepal as well. Just when we talk about the quota system or reservation, there is always issues for non-Dalits. And how do majority of non-Dalits feel about quota system in India as of now? One of our friend Ujjal asked these questions. Friends, we are taking questions from the chat box. Please put forward your question to Mr. Bharati. Can you answer these questions, Bharati?
Now, could you just explain this little more, that what exactly the question is?
How do majority of non-Dalit feel about quota system or reservation in India as of now? There is a lot of protest against it. There is Patels and others also demand the quota and reservation systems. So how they non-Dalit feel about it? So when we talk about the quota system, there is always issues on this.
Okay. Pradeep, we have to really dissect this whole concept of quota and really dissect who are the people who question the quota. For example, let me tell very clearly, the other backward classes, which forms 50 to 52% of the India's population, they are covered under the quota system. Are they questioning quota? I don't think they are questioning quota. About 17% are the scheduled caste. Are they questioning the quota? I don't think they are questioning the quota. About 8.5% are the scheduled tribe. Are they questioning the quota? I don't think they are questioning the quota. Let me come to the other religion. 33% of the Sikh population are the scheduled caste. So who are among the Sikh questioning the quota? Similarly, most of the Muslims are covered under the other backward classes. If they are covered by the other backward classes, are they questioning the quota? In many states, Christians are covered by the other backward classes quota. Are they questioning the quota? So who are these people left who really question the quota? These are the Brahmin, Baniya and Thakur. These are the three categories which question the quota. And why they question the quota? They question the quota because they have cornered the money power, administrative power, judicial power, and political power. So only those people who are threatened by the democratization of representation, they are scared of quota. If I share with you the data, let me share with you the data because I have the data. Let me share that if I tell you that I have a data, and I guess the person who has asked the question, I'll give one example. In last year, 2018-19, Government of India recruited only 184 people in class 1 job. 184. Though they should have recruited more people, but I understand. Okay, fine. They recruited 184. Out of this 184, if we go by the quota principles, they were supposed to recruit 92%, 92 people from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBCs. That is the 50%. But what actually they did? They recruited 141 people from Brahman, Baniya, Thakur. 76% recruitment was from non-scheduled caste, non-scheduled tribe, non-OBCs. Only less than 1/4, less than 25% recruitment was from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBCs. That may not give the entire picture of the quota. Let me share. In 2008 and 9, under the class 1 jobs that Government of India had, 77.8% jobs or positions were with non-scheduled caste, non-scheduled tribe, non-OBCs. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBC, which comprise of about 80% of the population, had less than 25% representation in the class 1 jobs, while 10 to 15% upper classes, upper caste, had more than 77.8% representation in the class 1 job. But that was 2008-2009. People may say, well, 10 years have passed, situation has changed, must have changed very. Let me share that out also. In 2018-19, the non-scheduled caste, non-scheduled tribe, non-OBCs, it means the Savarnas in India had 67.69% representation or cornered class 1 jobs. 80% people have less than 33% jobs, while 20%, less than 15% people have had more than 67% of the class 1 jobs. So therefore, because I really have I have discussed these reservations in very detail, that's why I must ask this question: who are these people asking the quota question? Have they ever asked the government of India or any government, have they asked how many secretaries are from scheduled caste? How many judges are from scheduled caste? How many chairmen are from the scheduled caste? The government of India creates National Commission for Women. Government of India creates National Human Rights Commission. These National Human Rights Commission, National Commission of Women are all upper caste commissions. There is no scheduled caste member in that. Even for the token state, there is no scheduled tribe member among them. Only scheduled National Commission for Scheduled Caste, National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, National Commission for Safai Karmcharis, National Commission for Backward Caste, they remain with the Scheduled Caste, Scheduled Tribe and OBC. Rest of the India is for the Savarnas, of the Savarnas, for the Savarna, by the Savarnas. So the quota question is asked by those who are against the democratization of bureaucracy, judiciary, army, business and industry.
Yeah, that's very true. And then these days, what I'm trying to say is we need to talk about the over-representation. So we need to now time to talk about the over-representation, versus that's one of the conversations we need to start to have. So I just want to take you from Pura system to some other questions. We have more questions coming from participant also. There is one question from Aruna Panta. What has been done to empower Dalit young people to understand their rights? How have they been empowered to question decisions made against their welfare?
Well, let me share with you. There is a Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs in India. I will request Ms. Pant to look at the program of the Ministry of Youth and Sports and Youth Affairs. She will be surprised that scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and other backward classes youth are not on their agenda. Once I went and met the Minister of Youth Affairs. He was surprised. I keep meeting as chairman of the National Confederation of Dalit and Adivasi Organization. I have to meet several people. So first this Minister of Youth Affairs will tell my staff, no, you go to the Ministry of Youth, Social Justice and Empowerment. Understand, Pradeep ji?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs, first they will ask, oh, why you are coming to Ministry of Youth and Sports and Youth Affairs? Why don't you go to the Social Justice and Empowerment? Does Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs mean only for the Savarna youth? Are youth of the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC are not the youth? So that is the mindset. Therefore, I can fairly and I can clearly tell that the government of India and ministry which are except the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, no ministry thinks about the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC. But there is a problem with our movement also.
So yeah, can you tell about our movement? How we are engaging young people? That's the spirit of the questions.
Yeah. So what is the problem with our movement? Our movement has a very narrow perspective, and it has happened because the second-rate leadership among the Dalits. Dr. Ambedkar had a very wide vision. If you look into the document that is submitted as memorandum, you will find he was talking about the economics, he was talking about the politics, he was talking about the housing rights, water right, anything that come under this sun, he was talking about all those things. But post-Ambedkar leadership, is only crying for the crumbs. And what are those crumbs? Reservations, atrocities, and holidays in the name of Dr. Ambedkar or our legendary figures. So I'll share with you that recently, if you talk to any Dalit intellectual, you just hear them for half an hour, they will start from the Sindhu Ghati Sabhyata and they will end up on reservation. Because this is what Brahmanism has taught them. This is what Manu system has taught them. So our Dalit, the leaders and the intellectuals of the Dalit movement are also victims of the thought process of the Brahminical Manuvadi system. They don't have free mind. They are unlike Dr. Ambedkar. So there is a need of free mind. Therefore, you belong to Dalit movement, you know very well. Unless NGO intervene, where are the women in the Dalit movement, in political movement? Where are youth in the political movement? Where are children in the political movement? Where are right to food in our political movement? When for the first time we brought out, the NAGDOR brought out about 18 reports on nutrition.
We have a lot of questions actually. Can you be brief?
Yeah.
Can I go? Yeah, can I ask another question to one of the
go ahead.
friend?
Go ahead.
Amar Bike, he
you
asked,
can intervene me in between, Pradeep.
Yeah, you need to be very brief. We have less time and we have many questions.
Right.
So one of our friend Amar Bike asks, Dalit in India have again remarkable achievement after independence, and that caste violence, atrocities, and state prosecution against Dalit still continue remarkably. However, we don't see a nationwide strong Dalit protest against this caste violence and a state prosecution. What do you think? Why strong protests are not happening in India? I see a lot of protests from your side. Can you Albert share on this? But you need to be very brief. We have many questions.
No, I politely disagree with Mr. BK. He hasn't seen the 2nd April Bharat Bandh in 2018. What is this Black Lives Matter? That was a nationwide protest now. Black Lives Matter. That you have Dalit Lives Matters in Nepal. On 2nd April 2018, what was that? Was it not Dalit Lives Matters? The only thing, we did not give that name to the Bharat Bandh as Dalit Lives Matter. That's all. The whole country was shaken. Whole bureaucracy was shaken. And there is always protest whenever atrocity takes place. It's not that they are going unchallenged.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another question from Prarthana Dikshit. How can we work towards establishing an ecosystem where Dalit people can thrive in different sectors without scrutiny?
Why scrutiny?
Yeah.
Do they scrutinize the Brahmins? Do they scrutinize Lalas? Do they scrutinize Thakurs? If not them, then why only Dalit being scrutinized? You want to scrutinize the poorest of the poor and weaker of the weakest of the weaker. What is the logic behind it? So I don't agree this theory of scrutinizing. I guess Dalit need sympathetic hand. They need empathic support. They need helping hand. They don't need scrutiny. If you have to scrutinize, yeah, you have to scrutinize the powerful and mighty, not the meek, weak, and powerless.
Yeah, very good thought. We have more questions. So one of the question here is Raj and Singh. We are more focusing on economic, educational, employment, and other opportunity for Dalit, scheduled caste, and others. But they are still suffering from casteism. His question is, how could we change the mindset of so-called upper caste people on casteism and in caste system?
Well, you can't change their mindset. You can't change their mindset. You have to change your mindset. Unless you challenge their mindset will not change. Only your strength, only your merit, only your accomplishment will challenge their mindset and they will change. This is what has happened in India.
A very good answer. We have more questions. You got an award while working on Millennium Development Goals. So one of the questions from Sudeshna, Nepal, what have been the outcome of the Millennium Development Goal that are in favor of Dalit and the minority groups to ensure equal and dignity for all? Actually, that's relevant to maybe SDG, if you want to highlight that also.
Well, the Millennium Development Goal gave us chance to talk about the poverty of the Dalits, poverty of the minority, poverty of the tribals. So that was the context, because it was a global program. And in a global program, when poverty is an agenda, inequality is an agenda, then you have to show multi-dimensionality of the agenda. So I guess now, if you remember that now, there is a multi-dimensional poverty project that is housed in the Oxford University. So why they are talking about the multi-dimensional poverty? Because they believe poverty is not only an economic issue. Poverty is a multi-dimensional issue. So I guess the Millennium Development Goal, and you know that we run a campaign, Dalit campaign against poverty. So nobody thought when, when we begin this campaign, the upper caste Indian society will tell us, oh, you bring casteism in the poverty also. So, well, we have to poke them. We have to tell them, yes. And I'm proud of bringing the caste as an issue in the poverty, because only then we will come to know where the poverty is located. I can give you the data. Only 2.2% of the castes are extreme poor. Only 4.5% Brahmins are extremely poor. Only 7.5% of the Thakurs or Kshatriyas are extremely poor. More than 50% of the Adivasi are extremely poor. More than 27% of the scheduled caste are extremely poor. These figure tells the how caste is an important factor in poverty.
Yeah, thank you. We have a few more questions. Caste Nepali asks, what major formula should be needed for the elimination of caste system in India, Nepal, or South Asia? So,
intercaste marriages. One and the only solution. Get married to a higher caste man or women, or a lower caste man or a woman. Show empathy. You will be threatened with your life, but you have to, if you want to really annihilate the caste, you have to dare to marry intercaste.
So there is issues while there is intercaste marriage happening in Nepal also, in one of the district in Rukum recently, there's a 6 young people killed in name of caste intercaste marriage. There's a huge issue. How can we address that? So it's a very difficult and challenging situation.
Well, that is a challenge to the state, authority of the state, not challenge to you or me. It is the authority of the state. Does Nepal as an authority, Nepal as a state, prohibit intercaste marriages? If not, then it is a threat to the authority of the Nepali government. Similarly, because intercaste marriage is not prohibited by the government of India, if people are killed in the intercaste marriages, it is a challenge to the authority of the government of India. And as far as the perspective of Dalit movement is concerned, we have to sacrifice to annihilate the caste.
That's the only one suggestion, or do you have more ideas on this?
Well, there are many more things, but I guess that is the fundamental. Because unless two families, other things are superficial, but these are fundamental. Because like what you can do, you can organize, you can systematically ensure that the business, Dalits and non-Dalits are business partners. They have common schools of quality education together. We have collective hostels. So we have to find, and what is the fundamental that the Dalits remain in a hamlet and upper caste remain separately. So we have to break this social isolation. We have to promote social mingling and use all mechanisms to encourage social mingling, economic mingling, cultural assimilations. So we have to do all this together. But if you do rest of the things and don't do intercaste marriage, caste will remain an issue.
Do you want to share your personal story? As far as I know, you had an intercaste marriage.
No, in my family, everybody has got a caste marriage.
But it's not necessary. But if you feel this is a good example for young.
No, I am proud having married to a Brahmin women. Though women are not Brahmins by any standard, because they are not offered this what you call Janevu or the sacred thread. So, but born in a Brahmin family, yeah, that's my wife, yeah, and I love that.
Great. Yeah. Congratulations for that. I'll take you a bit in the movement or political participation questions from the intercaste marriage. So one of the friend asked, that's Gopal Nepali, you said earlier also the political participation is good, but why are they unable to develop strong laws and policies to eradicate the caste-based discrimination? Especially in South Asia, we have laws, policies, but the problem is same.
That we must understand. I shared with you the structure of the bureaucracy. You cannot, remove structural problem when you have the similar structure that existed 1,000 years ago. What was the structure before the independence in India? The bureaucracy, the steel frame of the British government, were either British or by the upper caste Indian. After British left, what is the structure? What is the institutional structure of the Indian government? Bureaucracy. It is same, upper caste, upper class. So how can we expect if the character of the bureaucracy has not changed? Why should they implement the policy which is not in favor of their people, but in favor of those people whose interest clashes with the interest of the people of the bureaucracy? So therefore, democratization of bureaucracy, democratization of judiciary, democratization of army, democratization of business, democratization of economy, all these things are fundamentals if we really want to address policies. Need implementation mechanism, but if your implementation machinery is fraudulent, is incompetent, incoherent, or has no intention to implement your policy, then you make any policy. Dr. Ambedkar used to say, however good the constitution may be, if the people are good, constitution will be very good. If constitution is good, people are bad, the constitution will not be good, then it will turn out to be a bad. So it depends on the machinery or the people that who run the institution. So yeah, and I guess that same is the situation in Nepal. You look at the composition of the bureaucracy, you look at the composition of the judiciary, you look at the composition of the economics, you will find same people who were ruling earlier, they are ruling even now. Only nomenclature has changed. Earlier it was Raja, now it is a prime minister.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a question from Giri Bahadur Sunar. Even in capitalist society, why caste system exists?
Sorry?
Why caste system exists even in this society is capitalistic?
You know that caste has two characters. Caste is capitalist as well as Brahminical. Within a caste, it is a capitalist in character. And in intercaste, it is a Brahminical. So for example, there is a say Sunar community in Nepal. So a rich Sunar, a poor Sunar will have differences. A rich Sunar will never like to sit with the poor Sunar. Look at the caste. If there are two rich, one rich Sunar and one rich Brahmin, they are the same class, but rich Brahmin will never like to engage with the rich Sunar. So this is what the caste has dual character, capitalist as well as Brahminical.
Yeah, that's a great answer actually. So you can take a bit time on these questions. This is very important questions for me, and you always told me these questions, and I just want to repeat and ask you again. You often say that Nepal should have its own Ambedkar. How do you see it possible? You can take few minutes on this.
Let me share with you that the world over, the great people have been produced. They have fought battles. So there was Isa Masih, there was Pegambar. But Pegambar can't be my Pegambar. Isa Masih can't be my Isa Masih. Because Isa Masih liberated people. I agree with that. But will he liberate me? I have a doubt. Pegambar had liberated millions and millions of the Islamic people. But would he liberate me? I have a question. Similarly, because all peoples are the product of their time, of their specificities. Dr. Ambedkar was a product of his time, specificity. He has given a theory on caste. He has dealt caste wonderfully. But you know, no foreign man can enlighten the people in other countries. I can revere Martin Luther King Jr. But if I take the name of Martin Luther Jr. and I run a movement on his name, it will not be successful. So therefore, my belief is, because Nepal has its own condition, so somebody from Nepal has to rise to the occasion to understand the Nepal society, to unfurl the Nepal society, educate the Nepali people, not only the Nepali Dalits, but Nepali Adivasis, Nepali upper classes, Savarnas, everybody. And he has to really negotiate with the Nepali society. Only then he can become an acceptable personality in the Nepal. Dr. Ambedkar had negotiated with Indian masses, Indian leaders, Indian situations. You can take inspiration from Ambedkar. I have no doubt. I can take inspiration from Martin Luther Jr. King. I do take inspiration from the Black Panther movement, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, W.E.B. Du Bois, I can Booker T. Washington, I can name on a n number of the Afro-American whom I take the inspiration. But the fundamental, our movement fundamentally is based on what Dr. Ambedkar elucidated as the principle of the Indian Dalits. Therefore, in Nepal situation, you can read Dr. Ambedkar, but Dr. Ambedkar was never in Nepal. He was only a couple of times in Nepal. He went in a Buddhist conference there, World Conference of Buddhists, and he shared the dais with the Nepal king. So therefore, you have to, every society has to find their own leaders. You cannot import leadership. You cannot import inspiring leaders from other countries to inspire your community. So that's what I always say.
Yeah, thanks. This is last questions. You can say some message for young people as well, but I'll ask these questions. Tirupati asks, if you could shed light over Dalit constituency, the stand of Dr. Saib, then how do you think the idea could have path for the Dalits to power differently in India and Nepal?
Would you mind to repeat once again?
If you could shed light over Dalit constituency, the stand of Dr. Saib, then how do you think the idea could have a path for the Dalits to power differently in India and Nepal?
You know that, first of all, we must understand, Dr. Ambedkar was not only a social leader. He was a social leader, he was a cultural leader, he was a political leader, he was an advocate, he was a constitution chairman of the drafting committee. So he has multitudes of strategy that he used for empowering the Dalits. Now, the question is whether today's Dalit movement, Dalit movement today, is that broad as it was in the time of Dr. Ambedkar? Or our Dalit leaders have that broad idea of the society as Dr. Ambedkar used to have? My understanding, my experience tells, most of the Dalit leaders do not think beyond a narrow confine of thought process. Let me share with you that in India, when we founded National Confederation of Dalit and Adivasi Organization, nobody was talking about the economic issues of the Dalits. So much so that we never had, prior to the NAGDOR, we never had a national platform of the Dalits negotiating with the government, talking to the government, critiquing the government policies. We had multitude of political parties. Even now, we don't have a cultural organization at national level. We don't have any organization which really works for the economic emancipation, social emancipation, educational emancipation. So our problems are so vast, but our approach are so narrow. So therefore, my suggestion would be broaden your mindset. Don't limit yourself to the caste. Caste is not the problems of the Dalits. This is the problem of the Brahmin, Baniya and Thakur. Let them die with this. Why we take care of that? We do what we can do as a human being. Let them live with the caste. Let them marry in their own family. Why should we bother our caste? So forget about them. We should build our structure and believe in self-help. Other people have never helped us, they will never help us. Somebody will come with a pious heart, they will come and help. But that will be exception, not the rule. You cannot run your movement based on exception. You have to run your movement based on rules. And the normal rule, general rule of the Nepali or Indian society is there is a casteism by the upper caste. And we have to confront it. Let them do whatever they want to do. We must focus on our progress. We must fight for our right. Social, economic, political, human, every right.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to mention that 1956, 20 November, Dr. Ambedkar gave a speech in front of King Mahendra that time. You just mentioned rightly. That's great. Thank you very much. And then I feel that 18 years back, you had that much energy, and right now also you have that much energy. I'm very impressed. Thank you very much. If you have any final word, anything, just for 1 minute or 2 minutes for your final thought.
Forget about reservation, forget about caste, forget about upper caste. Live on your own terms. Dr. Ambedkar used to say, educate, agitate, and organize. Have faith in your strength. The moment you start believing faith, the moment you start believing in your strength, then everybody will disappear. You will prevail. So prevail. And the last request, send the beautiful photograph that you have.
I preserve that. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashok. Thank you very much for joining with us today. We have come to the end of today's episode of Caste Conversation. On behalf of Dalit Lives Matter Nepal, I want to thank you everyone for your solidarity. I am also thankful to my friends Vikas, Prakriti, Britika, Sulochana for making this possible. Friends, we'll see you next week with another guest to talk about the caste questions in Caste Conversation. This is Pradeep Pariyar signing off today. Thank you, Ashok. Bye. This is really pleasure. Thank you so much. You always inspiring us. Thank you. Maybe we will have a great talk in Delhi very soon. Stay safe, stay happy. Namaste, everyone. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay happy. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
We are signing off. Thank you.